Good evening, good morning, or perhaps good afternoon. Welcome back to the SAP's podcast. This is Season 1, Episode 5 of The Leftovers, Gladys. My name's Sam, and I'm, as always, joined by my two distinguished co-hosts. First of all, Ant.
How's it going, everyone? Really happy to be here. Episode 5. Let's crack on.
And Phil.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a good week.
Indeed it has. As you can hear, we're ready, and we're going to waste absolutely no time, and we're going to get right into the breakdown of this episode. But I will remind you of our spoiler policy. So there will be no future spoilers. The only episodes that will be spoiled are the current episode that we're on and the previous 4 episodes that we have done.
Just a point here, Sam. If we correctly guess something that happens in the future, because we're just great at analysing things for the night, is that technically a spoiler?
No, because it's all theoretical, because it's you guys, we don't have to worry about that so much.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
Tone early.
Your analytics from the previous episodes has meant that's not an issue I've had to be worried about. So,
for reference, episode 3's a cracker.
But yeah, so let's get right into the breakdown of Gladys. So we start off with the aforementioned Gladys and Patty having what looks like a bit of an intense meeting, and Gladys just nods in a very assured way. And we get a little montage of Gladys's daily life, painting things white, being abused by people, all things we've seen in previous episodes. But then an old man falls in front of her, and she just completely ignores him, just walks straight past. And then at a gas station, Gladys is then kidnapped, and she's taken to a forest where she is taped to a tree and stoned to death. Oh, super uncomfortable to watch. And Gladys does actually talk after a few stones hit her. She does in fact talk and is begging the people to stop, which of course they unfortunately don't. And what was your initial kind of reaction to this opening?
Sure. So just before this stoning happened, it was interesting to see the montage, but with the GR, because they're cold to everyone around them, they harass people, they stand there in silence, and they don't help, elderly people who fall over in the street. They're shown to have no heart and no compassion, so that's why, people abuse them. When she was captured, it was pretty distressing. There's no indication of who did it, which is quite interesting, because they all had masks on, so you just think it's some vigilante group. And then, the actual act itself, it's brutal, isn't it? I think you can even hear kind of like veins popping and a jaw breaking and all that kind of stuff. And it was almost GOT-esque, wasn't it? Just how in your face and how brutal it was. But it made for a real strong, cold opening. And I was going to say I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it was certainly an interesting way to start.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. You can't fault the show for like the openings are always they grab your attention immediately, don't they? They kind of immediately draw you into the episode. So yeah, as you said, like it was good to see how the Good Riddance squad react to other people. So it's not just a case they stand there and taunt them or remind them of what's happened, but actually don't take any kind of active role in trying to help others in any other way. Which is quite interesting, considering this cult does appear to have religious ties to it. We smoke to prove our faith, not because we enjoy it. So it's interesting that they intentionally leave a man, almost step round the man. And I think the person Gladys is with at the start actually almost does a double take to see if she should help, almost take her lead from Gladys, if I recall. And then, when you were saying about how almost uncomfortable it was, I was fixated watching it, but it was quite uncomfortable watching her being taped to the tree and then stoned to death.
Yeah, because normally they'll like cut away, won't they, at moments? But it was
this was
fantastic filming and editing the way they did the way they did it.
Fully, the only thing I really thought about this was I'd wondered because not quite sure the people who are carrying out the attack. I know they're dressed all in black, and I wondered if they're supposed to be the same group that we see in
episode
Yeah, two
Yeah.
boats and a helicopter, the ones who throw the stone, because the man you see hanging out the window is wearing all black as well,
Yeah,
which I think I
potentially,
pointed
yeah.
out at the time.
Yeah,
It's pretty. Yeah.
just going
Sorry,
to say,
Sam,
it's definitely a potential link. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say most kind of stereotypical criminals dress in all black, don't they?
True.
For me, also, just towards the end of the stoning, when Gladys does speak, I think they try to really make a thing out of the fact that she's talking now, and they are, she is begging them to stop. But it didn't really have too much of an impact because, if your commitment is not to speak and you're just getting, stoned to death, then I think you're allowed to speak. And it was just brutal, wasn't it? No other word can.
Yeah,
summarize it better.
absolutely. I thought they, because she doesn't start speaking till like after the 5th or 6th stone, does she?
Hmm.
And I thought what they might be trying to do there is showing her commitment to the cause. Because later on in the episode we hear, she may have doubted or had problems with that. So it's quite a good way of showing that she was very firmly committed to this. I mean, I'd have definitely cried out after the first stone, let alone before that, to be honest.
They were big stones, weren't they? Being
Yeah.
proper thrown, weren't they?
Hefted, yeah.
And I wouldn't totally agree with you, Ant, when you said that it didn't really have too much of an impact, because for me it was the fact that she did speak. Just the impact for me was just like, how terrible is this that she's going through, that someone who before, I know later on in the episode we learned that she had doubts, but until that point we only see her as like a steadfast member, and then with the fact that she is then speaking, for me that had a fairly decent impact on me, I must say.
All I was going to say, sorry, is I just thought, do you think there's a bit of a, because the good riddance, they kind of see themselves as already being dead, right? That's one of the things.
Yeah.
It's that the whole point is kind of there's no family, there's nothing left because we're actually
life
already dead.
Life ended on the 14th. Yeah,
exactly. So it's quite the fact that she, kind of begged them to stop. Don't get me wrong, I understand why she did it, but it seems slightly at odds with that kind of belief for a long time to me. They already think they're dead, so does this really matter?
Well, yeah, it hurt when it fell.
Yeah, definitely. But so then we see pretty much the rest of the guilty remnants rush to the scene and search for Gladys, and then of course he shows up. The dog killer just shows up and just shoots a couple more dogs. When that happened, even on rewatch, I kind of forgot that happened. And you just like, okay, I guess, like fine. And of course, guilty remnant do find Gladys. Ant, I'm going to come back to you for your thoughts.
Sure. So just a comedy point. When they get out of bed, they're all sleeping on futons on the floor, wouldn't they? They're buying churches and redecorating them, but they can't afford to get a few decent beds. So, maybe less money on cigarettes, more money on beds, perhaps. But I mean, yeah, Sam, just to see DK out of nowhere, it's certainly another shocking element to the opening. It definitely caught me by surprise.
Phil?
Yeah, exactly the same. So initially I'd almost wondered if the dog killer was going to be... I don't know, I almost thought that it's the first time you see him interacting with other people other than briefly with Jill. So I'd wondered if this was it was actually Kevin, but kind of projecting the dog killer alias. I don't know if I'm reading too much or thinking too deep into that.
It's a fair assumption, isn't it?
Yeah, so initially when I saw that scene, that's how I thought of it as. Actually, it's not actually the dog killer, it's Kevin, but Kevin's ulterior, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. No, it's definitely an interesting interpretation. Not something that I thought of when watching it, but I can definitely see why you get there. So fair enough. But then, cutting to Kevin for the first time in the episode, he abruptly wakes up from sleeping, as we've seen in previous episodes, so potentially he was having another dream sequence. And I know you're devastated that this wasn't shown on screen, but
Absolutely,
anyway, let's try and move on. But then it's made up to us because we get some more lovely topless shots showing off Justin Theroux's body and that back tattoo, and just, god damn it, what a man. What a man. But as he's getting dressed, a bunch of his white shirts are missing. You can see just empty hangers. So just put a little pin in that. Just remember that will become relevant in this episode. And then you see him struggling just to work like his simple home alarm. Just, the easy things just aren't going right for Kevin. And then Patty turns up at his house and tells Kevin the news about what happened to Gladys. Phil, anything you noticed about this scene?
The thing that really struck me was in the background when he turns the news on, and then it's showing I can't remember the name of the government agency, but attacking another cult, attacking a cult. I think it's in Florida. And I think that you hear a bit more about it at the end of the episode. But I was quite, I don't know, because all the cults we've seen so far have been non-violent. I don't think I've seen any cults that have, any kind of military or unpleasant but not aggressive stances on things. So I was quite surprised to suddenly start seeing the government cracking down so hard on them.
Yeah, sure. Ant, any thoughts? In general?
Yeah, to be honest, something I'll touch on later, but I think Kevin certainly got a lingering eye over Amy in the hallway. And then also just on the alarms, I mean, we come on to it more later in the episode, but my initial thought was that the GR messed around with the combination on the alarm or something like that, because you see them breaking into houses on a previous episode. And the whole shirt thing, obviously, well, this is the third thing that I'm just mentioning that we'll expand on later, but I didn't really think too much of it at the time. But what I've learned with the leftovers is they don't really show anything that's not important. There's always something to be read into it. So I thought, okay, well, why would white shirts be missing? Who would steal them? What's going on? So at the time, I just thought, okay. And obviously, there'll be more later.
Yeah. I thought maybe they could have been, again, just trying to show his mental state. Kind of him thinking things, like the bagels, for example. Things seem to go missing and he's not quite sure why.
Yeah.
Well, there's a deeper meaning to that, Phil. Well, I did touch upon that.
We did, and I did notice there are 3 empty coat hangers, so I was quite disappointed when I saw that. But you know what I've just thought about? You see 2 dogs running in the opening scene. It's 2 dogs that get shot.
That's another link.
So I can only assume those dogs must represent the 2%.
And the guilty remnant tend to stalk people in packs of 2.
It all adds up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, well made.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. But yeah, so there is definitely quite a bit of stuff in this episode which we'll be able to come on and expand a bit more upon later. And I think with the stuff with the white shirts and the alarms, again, we'll talk about Kevin in more detail as we get towards the end of the episode. But I think they're just trying to show almost where just the simple things are just he's having difficulty with, and it just does kind of raise the question, which I'll somewhat put to you guys later, which is this just, is he just stressed out and things are just unlucky for him and they're just going wrong? Or is it, is he losing his marbles? But so, like I say, we'll come on to that in a bit more detail later. So we cut then to Meg, and she's talking to Laurie. Obviously, Laurie isn't talking back, but about Gladys's murder, and she says that she isn't surprised. And I'll just quote the line that she says. She says, "We want them to remember something that they would rather forget. It was only a matter of time." Which, I mean, not that the attack is understandable, but you can definitely see why Meg's line of thinking has led her to not to be surprised at all. And then Laurie has a panic attack. And I just saw quite a big contrast in this from Meg saying that she wasn't scared about anything that was going on, or scared of being attacked or anything, to Laurie then having a panic attack. They're definitely trying to show a little dichotomy between these two here. So Phil, what did you make of Meg in this scene?
I found it interesting because Meg, she makes it quite clear she understands why they're being attacked, but doesn't really have any remorse for what she's doing. She's there like, oh, these people would rather forget it, but we're not going to let them. It really surprised me the way she's. It almost sounds like she acknowledges that they almost deserve it. I'm not saying they do, but that's how I read it. Was, oh yeah, I understand why we deserve this.
Yeah. She knows it's an occupational hazard.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, she's definitely more on board now, isn't she? With the GR line of thinking, she's getting indoctrinated. Nice, and she's cooking. She's cooking on gas now, isn't she? I think she's just coming on to the panic attack scene. It was really well filmed. I don't think I've ever seen a scene like that. That was filmed as well as that one. And I really like your point, Sam, just the contrast of Meg being all calm and then Laurie, the more experienced one, having that anxiety attack. So yeah, I thought it was really, really a real strong sequence.
Yeah, especially she's someone that we've seen before kind of fail in her faith, if that makes sense. Trying to go back and pick up the lighter, for example.
Sure.
It does kind of show how one's not faltered and the other one has. I also got to say, I think the actress does such a good job of portraying Laurie, because it's got to be hard to try and act out and get messages across without using any words. Like that's quite a challenge, and I fully bought into the panic attack, the crisis of faith. So I think it's so well portrayed by Amy Brenneman.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, 100% though. Like this program, obviously, I've said in previous episodes about just how much I absolutely love it. If the fact that we're doing a podcast about it at my suggestion wasn't obvious enough, but I think all of the actors do like a really, really good job, and I'll just quickly say here that Justin Theroux, I think before this program, I'm not sure if he was really always respected as like being a great actor in Hollywood and that kind of thing. And I don't think people knew he had the levels that he shows, has already shown in these 5 episodes. And, obviously there's a lot more to come as well. So just shout out to all the actors because they're all fucking brilliant.
Does that include the twins?
Does that include the twins? I was going to say. You just said all of it, so
yeah,
that's
you
it
did.
now.
You've
committed.
But I meant all humans. They're not included. So we cut then to Kevin just rocking those goddamn Ray-Bans. But he's doing it at the scene of the crime, which to me was just unnecessary, as it just isn't sunny at all. But fuck me, it just looks good, so I don't care. Anyway, so the dog killer's still there at the scene, and it's just so weird. Just asked to leave the scene so he could get to his ballroom dancing lesson. Which what the fuck? And any thoughts on Kevin's sunglasses?
Yeah, I mean he's wearing them because of that low winter sun, isn't it? I presume, and maybe it's part of his identity. Going through a stressful time, and it is a bit of a shield, isn't it, when people can't see your eyes? So that's perhaps the reason he wears them, or they just look brilliant. And he's single now, isn't he? He's got to.
Yeah, it's true.
Got to make the effort
on the market.
You never know who you're going to meet on the crime scene.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Back on the menu. Anyway.
So it's also the first time that dog killer's actually named as Dean by a character who isn't Kevin or Jill. So it's just confirmation that he's not an illusion and he is a standalone character. So it's really cemented in that moment. I thought that was quite a significant thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I watched that trying to see if there was a way. I even watched it back and say, "Oh, that old man over there." And I was kind of surprised by that description because I wouldn't describe Dean as an old man. That's not the description I'd use to apply to him.
He's not an old man, is he? He's a little bit older. That's it.
Yeah. So I'd initially wondered if it was actually a red herring again. Actually, he was supposed to have gone spoken to someone else. But the other thing, and it kind of goes from you talking about that low winter sun, Ant. Is it always winter here? Because we know a substantial amount of time has passed now, and it seems permanent.
6 weeks or so, right?
Well, it's been more than 6 weeks now, surely.
I know there was a 6-week jump when you saw, so on the BJ and the AC. Because I remember Thomas just talk about the 6-week jump. So it's probably still within winter, to be honest with you.
You reckon it's still within that same? Okay.
I know what you mean, though, Phil. And I think if there is one criticism of The Leftovers season 1 overall, it's that. And there's no spoilers in this at all, but you can tell from the first 5 episodes, like things, are usually quite drab. It's usually in winter. Like the color scheme, just in general of the show isn't really popping or anything, and it is something that they address going forward. So that'll be interesting once we get to that.
At the Heroes Parade, isn't the weather quite bright? Isn't it a clear blue sky?
Yeah,
I don't know. Phil,
I think most people have still got jackets on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I took the impression I took the impression it was still, if not cold, but like not pleasant, like not warm.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I thought he was getting into something else there.
No problem.
Okay. So Kevin then turns up at Jill's school, right into her class, and she runs off crying because she obviously just thinks that Laurie's been killed. Because why else would Kevin be here? But Kevin is actually just there to tell Jill that about what's happened, but just to tell her that it isn't Laurie, just so she doesn't hear it from someone else and think that it might be. So he's just trying to look out for her there. So Jill says then that she shouldn't have cried for Laurie because Laurie wouldn't have cried for her. But as we've seen, that's actually not true, because what we've seen from Laurie in previous episodes is that she is not fully let go of her family. Phil, can you offer anything on this little scene?
Yeah, it was interesting that as soon as she sees her, she assumes the worst has happened to her mum, and that's the first place that she goes to. So I thought that was quite interesting how at the front of her mind she must be. But what I did think was strange, when you see her putting a hand in the fire over the Bunsen burner, and clearly not quite trying to burn herself, but trying to see how long she can hold it over for.
Yeah.
Sure. And I thought it was strange how Amy was there, like, is that the best you can do? Like, trying to push her to almost do worse. That was quite a... I'm not quite sure the word I'm looking for here. Is a sadistic moment, kind of? Yeah. I was a bit like...
It's not great friendship, is it?
No, not trying to burn yourself, but... Yeah.
There is definitely a link of fire between that moment and the dream sequence for Matt in Two Penguins in a Lifeboat. No, it's not called that, is it? Sorry. It's called
Two Boats.
Yeah, Two Boats and a Helicopter. That's it. Sorry, I'm confusing the one before.
Two Penguins in a Life.
I'm gonna say
that's the episode that we all want to see.
Yeah.
But
that's the title of this one.
Later on, there's some stuff with fire, so I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but there's definitely more fire stuff. And Phil, if you don't earmark that for deleting, I'm just going to delete it anyway.
No, that's staying in. That is. You better believe, and that is staying in.
I hold the pen. So. I was just going to say as well, in the school, and it's something I've picked up on throughout the 5 episodes so far, Kevin has definitely got a bit of a lingering eye, whether it be Amy or those cheerleaders in the school. I don't know if it's anything big. He is, a man in his late 30s, I presume, or maybe even early 40s, and they are, I don't know how old they're quite supposed to be, the cheerleaders, but
I'd put them between 16 and 18, aren't they?
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know why they'd show that. It's interesting.
So initially I didn't really think about it that much. I initially just thought, maybe he's looking at cheerleaders, perhaps not quite in a cheerleaders, but more like, people are actually cheering or celebrating. It doesn't seem like people really do that anymore. So maybe that might have seemed quite strange to him. Perhaps, in hindsight, though, you are right that he's, we know he's had an affair before. We know he's had dreams about Amy. So perhaps, maybe there is a bit of a lingering eye.
We know he's packing also.
Yeah, that's true. We know he's got the goods to deliver on.
Yeah,
I'm calling that discussion. Let's just move on. As much as I like talking about Kevin's knob, not in that context. So in the next scene, Patty picks Laurie up from the hospital. Obviously, she's gone there because of a panic attack, and they start driving to an unknown place. Interestingly, then Patty puts the radio on and basically starts dancing, and this is the first time we've seen any sort of Good Riddance cult member do anything like that. Usually it's just pure silence, all business. So this was really, really quite an interesting turn from Patty then. And Phil, what was your initial kind of reaction?
So I was really surprised, but I was really surprised, but I'm wondering if she's almost testing her commitment to the GR at that point. That's what it felt like, because you don't see any particularly human interaction from Patty at any point, other than maybe when she speaks in the first episode to Meg. Other than that, she's always been very neutral, blank-faced, neutral.
All business.
Exactly that. All business. Even at the start of this episode with Gladys, with those, that kind of affirming nod that they each give each other. Mm-hmm. It's very, businesslike. So when she got into the car, and then it's a CD she puts on, isn't it? It's you see CD come up on the dashboard.
Oh, right.
And that's what initially made me think, I wonder if she's testing her, because she clearly set it, she was prepared for this, if that makes sense. Because she had a CD, she knew what the song was going to come on. She starts dancing a little bit, trying to be a bit human. Initially I just thought she was trying to test Laurie's commitment to the Good Riddance.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Ant?
Yeah, just in the hospital, I was really surprised that the doctor didn't press on the cigarette intake more. She's clearly had this attack, and then the doctor must know that they smoke a load of cigarettes, but he just kind of offered the medication, and that was it, really. So I found
sorry. I think he'd probably know that they ain't going to change, so there's no point probably trying to fight that battle.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
But who's paying the healthcare bill?
Well,
that's what I thought.
It remains to be seen. Well, she might have insurance and stuff. But, yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of it. It did kind of catch me by surprise. Well, obviously it caught me by surprise, the whole scene in the car. Yeah, initially I thought, is it some sort of test? Is it a trap? Or, is it just what it is and they're just letting the hair down? I wasn't sure what to make of it. I was just interested to see how it would move forward.
I must say, from Patty, because everything we've seen of her, as we've said in all previous episodes, she's all business, all serious. When she just had that kind of cheeky little grin on her face, it did make me laugh as she started busting some moves. So fair play for that. So back in the police department, Kevin and one of his co-workers are having an argument because this detective's called up the feds about the murder of Gladys, so they're going to take over the case instead of Kevin, which he's pretty pissed about. And Kevin then pushes the mayor to impose a curfew. So she says, just come down to a, what's the word she used? Like a formality of a meeting, just to put forward your case, and we'll get that done. She's clearly in support. Ant, anything to offer on that? Or?
Yeah, I don't think Kevin or the mayor really thought it through at the time. When you think about it, his head's a bit all over the place. He doesn't understand the process for imposing the curfew and maybe the laws of the land. So yeah, he was just a bit scatterbrained, but it was almost a bit of a side note, wasn't it? Wasn't focused on too much.
Phil?
So when I saw this, I took it as the fact the guy kept reading from the document and just ignoring his boss. To me, that struck me as I got the impression that people are getting fed up with the GR and they're getting fed up with Kevin not dealing with it. And, calling in a specific government organisation to deal with this. I mean, if I recall, I can't remember what the full title of the organisation is, but they've added cults to that. So, I think it's drugs, firearms, and explosives or something.
And cults, yeah.
And cults, exactly. So, at the initial, the actual government organisation doesn't have cults in it. So, it's interesting they've actually added that to a department because these cults have become such an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that, he's escalated this without going through his boss, and I imagine Kevin wouldn't be keen to bring in outside government organisations because he'd still be worried about Laurie. But yeah, so I took that as they're a bit fed up with Kevin, and they're fed up with him not dealing with this issue of the cults.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sure. I mean, also it just shows how fairly amateurish Kevin and his department are. They're just imposing curfews willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm.
At the crime scene, one of the police officers wanted to move the evidence, that could be dusty for prints and things like that. And they're not really on the same page with the one guy, I don't know if he's named, going through the process. So, yeah, it certainly reflects the chaos in the Mapleton Police Department.
Yeah. Is it Vitelli? Is that his name? Vatali?
I never bothered to learn that guy's name, to be honest.
Like the twins.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, moving on then, so we see Laurie having a brief interaction when she's standing outside a motel, just smiling at a child, but then her parents see and just have a go at her, and it just shows that the Guilty Remnant members just can't have normal interactions with anyone anymore. And so Patty and Laurie are going to stay at this motel overnight. So and Laurie's going to get a nice bed, instead of those little futon things.
It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, she's getting spoiled by Patty.
Put it on expenses, or is this coming out of Patty's private purse?
That's it. That is a good question, and that is the question I want the answer to the most. Anyway, Phil, anything to say on Laurie and Patty?
Yeah. So I thought. I like the fact that she gets her own... you're right, it's interesting the interactions they can no longer have with normal people. Smiling at children is even considered quite weird, especially if she's just a lone woman. But I like the fact she gets her own room, and that the room she gets is a non-smoking room, which I quite liked. I thought that was quite
totally
fun.
Missed that.
Yeah, there's like a little no smoking sign. And I really like that because it felt like a very nice, a very clear, like, right, you are now not going to do anything with the GR, to do with them. You're not smoking. She's running a bathtub by herself, got a bed to herself, gets to get up late. We see she gets up at like 2:38, I think it is, in the afternoon, all day breakfast. So I like the fact that straight from the moment she gets into the hotel, it's quite clear, right, you're now not going to be doing the good riddance. I'm not quite sure what the word would be for it, but kind of the rituals you have to go through. Yeah, protocol, exactly. No smoking, lying in, having a bath, the place to yourself.
I was thinking why they were there, but obviously just to rejuvenate after the panic attack. But I did think, if it is on expenses, it wasn't a particularly great location, was it? It wasn't a great place. Patty could have definitely loosened the purse strings a bit and gone for like a spa or something,
Yeah. That's it. There is a budget. They're not going to go too fancy. So we see Kevin now settling in to survey the guilty remnant house. He's presumably doing it to keep an eye on Laurie, not knowing that she isn't actually there. And then the next morning, he gets woken up by angry dogs. These fucking... What is going on with these dogs? And they clearly just don't like Kevin any more than he likes them.
How many dogs were there, Sam?
That's it. Oh, the 2 dogs. Ant, can you expand on that for us?
Well, to be honest, my mature approach would be that I'm not sure on the exact link here. Obviously, there's 2 dogs, and 2 is a big numerical theme throughout the 5 episodes so far. But the actual link of dogs, and you say that dogs don't like Kevin, they do bark at him. But even earlier in the first episode, they were never really chasing him. They're chasing the stag. So I'd probably disagree that the dogs don't like Kevin throughout.
But he wasn't killing them at that point. This is the first time we've seen him interact with the dog since he's been killing them, unless I'm mistaken.
In fact, the first dog he does get on well with before he starts killing them. Do you remember when he's out for the run?
Yeah.
And he meets the first one. And it looks... Initially, I thought the first one was going to attack, and then it looks like it's just going to pad over to him, and then it gets shot.
Yeah. I'm definitely keeping a tab on it. Every time I see a dog, I'm just looking to see how that unfolds. Because basically, if I was watching this show and not doing the podcast, I probably wouldn't think too much of it. But because we're analysing it scene by scene, you definitely pick up on more things. But I'm just not confident to say what the exact link is here.
I took it... not so much the dogs themselves at this point. I wasn't so much thinking about the dogs. I was thinking more... It's what the man says about the dogs. So I don't know if we ever know the dog walker's name, but he goes, "They're loud, but not a problem." And I kind of saw this as the opposite to the good riddance. Kind of, they're quiet, but this man does see them as a problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel.
Yeah, so I got the impression that there's like the town, at least, believe there's an underlying more sinister side to the good riddance, not just that they're here to, remind us of this terrible thing that's happened, that they see them as a real threat, more so than, 2 very big, loud, barking dogs.
Sure. And you probably would, wouldn't you, to be fair? If the good riddance cult was set up just down the road from you, you would probably be a bit concerned too. So Kevin arrives home, and again he's looking at the home alarm system in frustration. Again, these simple things just aren't working properly. And we see, again, that Kevin and Jill just simply cannot have a normal interaction. Their relationship is almost just completely broken down. And Amy says to Kevin that Jill just doesn't do okay. Like, as in she doesn't do okay for herself. But my reaction to that was just really like, how can she? In these situations, her mom's gone to join the guilty remnant, her brother's skipped town, he's doing God knows what, and her dad, seems to be losing his marbles a bit. I think even the best of us would be struggling to be chirper in those situations.
Sure. Mm-hmm. No, I do agree for sure. I think that at his core, though, I think that Kevin does mean well, and he is a good dad. Obviously, the mom joining the cult is really bad, and her stepbrother leaving is obviously a cause for concern. But my main problem with Jill is she's just a bit too much of a stereotypical moody teenager in this show, and I understand the reasons for it, but she's probably one of the main characters that I get on with or am interested in, the least. also don't like the fact that Amy's her best friend and she's taken her to these hedonistic parties and encouraging her to burn herself more. So she's probably not a great solution to the problem. But yeah, just in general, Jill, not my favourite.
Yeah, I think Jill is interesting, and obviously being the child of these two people as your parents and her situation is an interesting thing. But I will agree that her supporting cast is just pretty weak. Like Amy's okay, but she's just pretty much one note quite a lot of the time. And then obviously you've got I won't say who else, but
your favourites, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then all the other friends and stuff, and it's just not interesting at all. And I do agree they could probably have done more with Jill in this, because there is interesting kind of questions that can be asked. But along with the stuff with Tom, probably not the best stuff in this season, but still interesting nonetheless. So things start to get quite interesting now, because Laurie wakes up in her nice comfy bed at 2:38, as Phil mentioned, and she wakes up to find a note that there are some non-white clothes next to the bed, and they're in fact for her. And she meets Patty at the cafe, I'm guessing, or whatever it is in the motel, the eating area of the motel, and Patty's also dressed in non-white, and Patty is talking to her. And they are going to flex that all-day breakfast. Patty's all over that, and fair play to her for it. But it's revealed it's been 8 months since Laurie last spoke, and Patty tells her, well, look, you deserve a day off. And Laurie is just completely perplexed by all of this. So, Phil, just run me through what your thoughts on this are.
Yeah, I thought that for me this is a brilliant scene and a brilliant opener. I like the fact they finally, because we've asked quite a few times in these episodes, how long has Laurie been a member of the cult? Mm-hmm. So it's good to actually kind of get 8 months, which is interesting, because that's what means 2 years, 4 months post-event, roughly.
Right. And there's probably a bit of time as well, because as we've seen with Meg, when you first kind of go and join, you have that probation
period.
You have the probation period where you can still talk, so it's probably some more like a year or something like that.
Yeah, so it's interesting there wasn't an immediate cause from the departing. What I did like was it's really simple things, like when the waitress goes to speak to her, not the first time, the second time, because the first time she speaks and Laurie's still very much in the mindset of, well, I shouldn't say anything, could she still be writing things down? Mm-hmm. But it's the second time she comes over and asks the question, and she's like, oh, do you want anything, sweetie or honey, or it's quite a positive, very pleasant, oh, do you want anything to eat? And Laurie almost does a double take because of the way the staff member has spoken to her. Like, she's been spoken to in a really polite fashion.
Yeah.
And you can actually see Laurie's face really surprised. Like, I know she then struggles to speak. Like, almost like she'd forgotten, but it was quite nice to see that very simple, polite way of being spoken to really through her. And it felt very genuine, very realistic.
Yeah. I almost thought that she was on the verge of speaking then the second time. I'm not sure if you...
I thought that as well.
I thought she would have, and Patty... It's like, hang on a minute, Patty, I want to order, all day breakfast. I'm used to whatever that you're getting at the GR digs. I want
the
something
gruel,
nice. But
porridge.
yeah, I thought that Patty probably could have let her talk. Whether she would or not, I'm not sure. It was certainly weird to see them in normal clothes, and it begs the question, did they put them on expenses, and is there a limit to what you can get? Sam, can you flex your Ultra Boosts or the Off-Whites, And... it looks like a naff place, yet Patty's raving about the food, so that just shows the kind of standards that they're used to. And it makes you wonder, for sure, how much longer they're going to put up with their digs, because if they're, sneaking off for all-day breakfast at motels and sleeping in beds, they are obviously committed, but there's a little bit of wiggle room, and you do think if the others find out what the repercussions will be, and just how long they're going to stay in the house for.
True. I mean, we find, I think it happens, I can't remember if the scene all happens in one or if there's a bit of a cut in the scene, but they do say it's been a year since she last went to there. I mean, one night
Gladys,
a year.
Right?
Yeah, with Gladys, that's right.
Yeah, I think we'll get into all that in a bit more detail when we get to that scene. But for now, Kevin has now officially run out of white shirts. It's full on panic station mode. And so he has to wear a dirty one. And then he goes straight to the dry cleaners, but he doesn't have a ticket to pick up his shirts. And the guy working there says that he picks up his shirts last Tuesday and that he doesn't have them. But he doesn't actually do like a proper check as Kevin wants him to. Just something to note for later on. And Kevin runs into Nora at the dry cleaners. She's got her ticket. She's all set. But we see the chemistry between them again, and just a little conversation like that. All the sexual tension. They want to do it just so bad, and I want to watch anyway. Someone else jump in.
I think we should leave that hanging.
No. Yeah, I think the focus on the shirts, I really thought, they're really trying to double down on how he's losing it, on how he's not thinking about the simple things. I actually thought that the dry cleaner did do a proper check. He checked the system and he asked his colleague. And also, so I was kind of on his side. And the fact that Kevin hasn't got his ticket is just another thing just to show how all over the place he is. There's also a great line between Kevin and Nora. And Nora says that the shirts will turn up once you stop looking for them. And I think there probably is a loose link to be made between that and those that have departed. Perhaps you'll find some kind of peace if you stop looking for it and just focus on your life. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch. I don't know.
No, I think you're actually quite right. I think that I thought that's kind of what she was... If not, if perhaps a lack of self-awareness, because we know that she's really struggling with the loss of members of her family. But that's the message I took away from that. Almost try and get past your grieving. That's what I took from exactly as you've said, Ant. I did think the dry cleaner was doing a rubbish job. I think he wasn't really taking Kevin seriously. And I actually wondered if that's more more of a bigger reinforcement of the fact the town don't really like Kevin, or that they've lost all respect for him. By the fact that he didn't really look, his colleague didn't really look. And then I started to wonder why is just everyone seemed to be terrible at their jobs, from the police to the government body, the government agency, the morgue. Just everyone just seems to be terrible at the jobs at the moment.
That's interesting, though, isn't it? Because that is something that's not spelled out, but it's interesting that you've picked up on, because it's no one's there saying productivity is down, but just from observing it, you are have people just given up? Do people not care anymore? Has it been like this ever since? Is it getting worse? It's definitely really interesting to think about. But so in the next scene, Kevin's having Matt brought into the police station, and Kevin suspects Matt. Maybe, probably loosely, but it will definitely be in the back of his mind. I don't get the impression that Matt is the prime suspect for Gladys's murder. But after the guilty remnant brought up his church, Kevin just wants to explore that avenue. And Kevin has now forgotten about the council session with the mayor. Again, just poor timekeeping from Kevin, as we've seen in previous episodes. But the mayor did initially suggest that the meeting would just be a formality, so I'm not sure how words got out about the curfew already, but the whole town, it seems like, is basically out in force just to protest against it. Your man Dean, the dog killer's there, and he suggests that maybe the guilty remnant did the murder to themselves. Okay, fair enough. And then the vote for the curfew is unanimously voted down, so it's just another failure for Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange that if there is protocol for how they vote on these curfews, why the mayor or Kevin or anyone else in the police department didn't see that coming. Even if it is just a formality, surely they would have had to have a private meeting with the councillors. So, something to note. And I did find it quite funny that, well, I found two things quite funny. One, when Kevin just kind of leaves Matt there, he kind of questions him and just leaves him there, and Matt just kind of then doesn't even say bye to him, he just changes rooms. And then just the parallel to the COVID-19 at the moment, all the people in the room just moaning about not being able to leave their homes and stuff, and it I thought there was obviously some not deliberate foreshadowing, which was quite funny to watch.
It's very accurate as well, I have to admit. I did see that and think, yeah, that's quite accurate of what happens, I guess. Oh yeah, I initially wondered, what did Matt do with the money? Because my man's got 160,000 pounds, to spend now that he's not got the church. But I'm surprised the mayor lost control of the meeting. If everything so far, she's been, in like the dances and in previous meetings, Kevin's not had any support or had anything go right for him. But the mayor always did seem to, get support. People would applaud her. People would listen to her. Even when it came to earlier on in this episode, where Kevin's arguing with his underling, and then the mayor comes in and says, right, you give him the contact information, you deal with this. And it just happens. There was almost a bit of respect and authority about her. So I was surprised that she lost control of the meeting. It really does just show she was not expecting the opposition that she then had.
So Kevin goes to the guilty remnant house then, and he's going, to do what most people would say was a pretty good thing in general. He's going to give them whistles in case danger finds them so they can raise the alarm. And he's met just, of course, with silence, but people just looking like they don't care about anything that he's got to say. They don't respect him. And it just really struck me with Kevin just in this scene, because obviously he's got his faults, many, many faults. But here he's just trying to do the right thing and, protect the guilty remnant. And, he does try and do things to make sure Jill's okay, but things just aren't happening for him. And, it makes you think, is he just unlucky? Are things just going wrong and he's just unfortunate? Or is it about how he's kind of mishandling situations and flies off the handle, like when he swears at Dean, the dog killer, in the public forum, and everything just things were going badly already, but, you just can't do that. You've got to be better about things like that. So, Ant, anything to offer on that?
Yeah, I thought it was really stark seeing that JR weren't giving him any respect, where they were just doing what they normally do, just kind of ignoring him even, dealing with a tough crowd. It probably made him think, why am I bother helping? And, up until this point, you do think that Kevin is a good person deep down. He's doing the right thing. He hasn't left them out in the wilderness, so to speak.
Phil, anything you noticed about this scene?
Yeah, so first off, I completely agree with Ant's with your points there. I think one of the great things about Kevin, he's such a complicated character, because you see him fly off the handle, you see him swear at members of the public, you see him, beat up a member of the Good Riddance in the first episode.
Drinking and driving as well.
Drinking and driving, exactly. We'll see later on with the dry cleaners. And he keeps doing things that would make me feel, he's quite a repugnant person. He's a police officer. He shouldn't be beating people up, shouldn't be drinking and driving, shouldn't be doing all these things. But yeah, it's moments like this where you just see he's just trying to do the right thing, and that he occasionally just loses it. If that makes sense, he's such a convincing character, and such a complicated character, because he so often does things that I disagree with, things he shouldn't do. But then he does little things like this, just bringing whistles to try and keep people safe. People who, to him, have kind of taken his wife away from him, and yet he's still trying to protect them. So it's such a good, complicated character that he portrays.
Yeah, you really do go back and forth on him, don't you? Like, he'll even just, I was going to say scene to scene, but even just moment to moment within scenes, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's, you've done something good there, and that's okay. And then he'll do something else, and you're like, fucking hell, like, stop being a twat. Like,
yeah, exactly. Stop. Why are you doing that? Why are you beating that bloke up? You shouldn't. But the other thing I noticed in this scene is they've still got the Heroes' Day list on the wall. And that's why I was wondering about how much time had passed, because we know at least 6 weeks from a previous episode it's probably, I think, gone past Christmas, because you can't see any Christmas decorations in this one. So let's say at least 2 months. Well, yeah, so it would be in October, November, December. So at least 3 months has passed since the start of the season. So I thought it was interesting you had the Heroes' Day list was on the wall, because I wouldn't have thought they would have left it from 3 months ago. So that's why I'd wondered if more time had passed and they're actually now got plans for the next Heroes' Day.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I just thought it more of just like a nice little memento. We did something well. Let's just leave it on the wall as a trophy of our success, and we'll take it down. I don't know, when we run out of room or something.
Possibly.
So still in the same scene then, Kevin asks Meg where Laurie is and if she's okay. And he says, quote, "I'm the only person who gives a shit about you people, and you won't even tell me where my wife is." And then Meg responds with, quote, "She isn't your wife anymore, yo." That is just
really
peak.
Stone cold.
Really cold, wasn't it, from Arwen? Sorry,
Yeah.
I mean Meg.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. It's a good way of showing how she's fallen further into the cult.
She's on board now.
Yeah, she's fully.
Induction passed. Got the security badge and everything. Like,
Yeah, exactly. No longer temporary pass. But yeah, I thought it was quite a good way of showing her commitment and her slowly falling into the cult more.
Yeah, that's it. Because whereas before she never directly flirted with Kevin, but she's saying to Laurie about, oh, how hot he is and all this kind of stuff. And now she's just like, yeah, she's not your wife anymore. Like, she's just, she's indoctrinated.
I did think, though, actually, at the time, like, are they actually divorced at that point? Because I don't think they are. I know the papers were initiated, but don't you have to go to court? So
Yeah.
I thought that technically they're probably still together, but it's only a matter of time before they're apart. So just a minor point, really.
True, but could it be part of that whole there are no families anymore? So even though they're not, even if they're not formally divorced, there are no families.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. All good points. But so now we move on to, in my opinion, the best scene in the whole episode. And shout out to Ann Dowd for her performance in this scene, because she just fucking brings it. So Patty tells Laurie that she brought Gladys to the same cafe a year ago, because Gladys was questioning her commitment to the Guilty Remnant cause after learning that her son had died in Yemen, I believe it was, and she began to feel again, is what Patty says. She apparently started to mope around in the house, and then she started doing it out in the open too. So Patty took her to the cafe, and she says she gave her every opportunity she could to speak, but she didn't. Just like Laurie hasn't, she didn't break. And Patty says, and I'm just going to pretty much read all of what Patty says to Laurie here because it's brilliant. She says she understands the pull of family and of the past, and she clearly knows about the things that Laurie's doing, going to Kevin's house like we saw with the swing and going to get the lighter, etc. Patty's not missing any of that kind of stuff. And she goes on to say that what they do is hard, but there can't be any doubt, because doubt is fire, and the fire will burn you up until you are but ash. Oh, fucking shivers, mate. Shivers. So Patty then talks about what Laurie used to tell her to do in the last session before everything changed. Okay. Just, put a pin in that maybe. And she writes the name Neil on the doggy bag and then excuses herself, like, after clearly being quite upset. And again, just what a performance, what a great scene. And just give me your thoughts on all that.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? It was a fantastic scene. The monologue from Patty was just something else. What I would say was that, is this whole situation, is it just more of a test? Is it, I think it's been sold as a bit of a getaway, but maybe she's trying to understand more about Laurie. I think one of my main points, and it's one of the things I said I'll come back on, is with fire, talking about the fire in the dream sequence with I'm not sure if it's in Kevin's and in Matt's, but I know there's a lot of fire around. She says doubt is fire. You've got Jill with a burner as well, so I don't know if that's going to have some sort of subliminal meaning moving forward. And then just on the scene with the bag, I did think, what's in the bag? Something bad or good? My instinct at first was probably something good, but then I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be something not great, because I don't think the GR really do good things, do they?
You're right. I think you raised a really good point, especially with the fire. And so I'd thought a little while ago, because when I first watched this program, I was thinking quite like biblical. So if this was the rapture, and then if these people didn't, get summoned to heaven, then as the opening credits kind of imply that happens. You're right. You see fire throughout a lot of this show, and I was kind of thinking more like hellfire. You'll see it later on in this episode. Matt will talk about it with the rocks. Jill trying to burn herself on the Bunsen burner. The fire in both of the dreams prior to this. The fire outside. But also I was thinking about, do you remember the party in I can't remember if it's the first or second episode.
Second episode, I think, yeah.
And the guy burns himself there as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And so you're right. I think this is a reoccurring theme. And I'd wondered if it was initially
Doesn't she have to shoot the baby with a
That's right,
fire arrow as well? Yeah,
that's right. They were going to set him on fire. So I kind of got this, kind of implications of hell almost with the amount of fire that they're actually talking about.
There's something there.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something there.
Sorry, I'm not going to lie. That's all like really good analysis, like genuinely. But when you said hellfire, all that I could think about then was this. Phil, I don't know if you used to watch WWE, but was the commentator JR going through hell, fire and brimstone. I was really battling the thoughts of that and trying to listen to what you were saying.
So what I took from that was good point and all, but banter.
Yeah, innit? Good point, good analysis. Glad you made the effort, but I wasn't listening.
Yeah, but go fuck yourself. I was thinking of WWE.
Anything else to offer, Phil, before we move on?
Yeah, I think you see that she's barely holding it together. Not Lorraine. Patty is...
Laurie.
Laurie, sorry, god damn it. Laurie is doing... she's had panic attacks, but I almost wondered if this scene was... Patty actually grieving herself for the loss of Gladys, because she goes quite manic, she starts crying, she starts rocking, and I wondered if actually this break wasn't just for Laurie, if it was for Patty as well, and if it's something that she's had to do before.
Well, the thing is that's it. Like she says earlier, doesn't she, to Laurie about what they do is hard and all this, and I'm sure these meetings are, they're framed as in, okay, Laurie, you're having doubts, Gladys was having doubts, so we're having a break. But Patty is also getting the break as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's, telling herself that she's doing it because, she's delivering a message. But she is also getting to, wear different clothes and talk and eat nice food and all this kind of thing. So there's definitely another kind of layer to that.
Yeah, and grieve, and that's how I took it.
Yeah. So moving on, Kevin then picks up Matt to go and play. Sorry, start again. So moving on then, Kevin then picks up Matt to go and pray for Gladys. And Matt says the guilty remnant members are already dead and he's trying to bring them back to life. As in Matt's view, speaking the truth and facing up to it is tougher than just the silence. So I'll just leave that open to either of you guys to give you little thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting insight from Matt, although I would probably say that if he is a suspect, which Kevin has said he is, probably not to say things like that and just be relatively kind of neutral. Don't say anything that could be interpreted in a negative way. True,
but Matt at no point has ever... He's come across as slightly almost unaware of other people's feelings, thoughts, or emotions.
His emotional intelligence isn't great,
Yeah, his emotional intelligence just doesn't seem to be there. Quite often when he talks at people, kind of disregards what they might say or only really wants them to hear his points. I wasn't too surprised with him trying to preach again at Kevin. First thing I wondered was when he knocks on Matt's house, the man who opens the door, is that the man who brings his baby to baptize from the first episode? The redheaded bloke.
I could not tell you.
I don't think so, but I'm not 100%.
Okay, fair enough. It was just a thought. I was like, it'd be interesting if it had managed to save someone or bring someone back into the fold. Just trying to think as well. I didn't really get the whole conversation about, it's easier to stay silent than say the right thing or do the right thing. I thought that was I didn't quite understand the message behind that story.
Well, I think what Matt's trying to say is that the guilty remnant members are maybe trying to, they're probably making out to themselves that what they're doing is, really hard and everyone else isn't doing the right thing. But Matt's saying that going quiet and just saying basically like we've given up is almost like the easy way out. The tough thing is to say what happened, and we kind of don't know the answer for it, and we need to try and face up to the truth and that kind of thing. Because it's like they say with anything, bottling things up is kind of like the easy way out of it. The tough and the brave thing is to face your problems and to try and get through them. And obviously the guilty remnant members, I'm sure, think they are doing that in their own way. But I can see where Matt's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on then, at the morgue, Kevin and Matt are going to try to find Gladys's body, but they find out that it's actually been shipped out to the feds, to the guy that Kevin's been leaving voicemails for, Agent Killaney, and Kevin is pissed that it's already gone. But so then Patty and Laurie are back in the car, and they're back in white. So Patty then drops off the doggy bag on the doorstep, and she gets back in the car, and she turns that radio right off. Back to the silence, back to business. There can be no doubt.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I did question what was in the bag. You know, is it a trap of sorts? You know, I thought at that stage it's definitely going to be something malicious or not well intended. I did think, who's Neil? The only thing I could think was that it's Patty's ex, but wasn't 100% sure.
Kevin then arrives home, and once again he's struggling with the alarm, and he needs to try and get that sorted because he's getting a phone call from Agent Killaney, and he does then actually sort it, which again on rewatch even is a little bit surprising. Like, oh, okay, Kevin's sorted it now. It's just another one of these things in the leftovers where you're like, is there more to that alarm? Is there anything going on? Is there a point? I don't know, but you know. But anyway, so he's speaking to Agent Killaney on the phone, and Agent Killaney comes over all meta by asking, "Hey, what's up with the GR smoking?" Because that's what pretty much everyone who watches the program wonders. And then he tells Kevin that he can have armed officers just take out the guilty remnant because the shit spreads if you let it. And he says, don't worry about Gladys. She doesn't care. Just worry about your own town. And thankfully, Kevin refuses the offer. Phil, what was... Just talk to me about your overall reaction, because shit got serious very quickly.
Yeah, it went. Considering how jovial Killaney sounds on the phone, like, oh, you know, sorry I haven't been returning your calls, had a lot going on. So he sounds very relaxed. And then he uses a lot of very alarming statements, you know, eliminate the infestation, worry about your town. And this is what made me think back to the second episode when they attack the ranch, and just the speed and ferocity at which they attack and start shooting people with almost no restraint.
It's a nice link there, Phil.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I'd wondered if they were the same, if it was the same agent, but you don't get to know the agent in the second episode, do you? You don't learn his name.
I don't think it is just from the guy's voice, but it is a link to kind of like overall, you know, the thinking across departments.
Exactly. Yeah, but also, like he talks about Florida, so he's been part of the operation that you see on the news that I mentioned earlier. So you know, he's someone who is carrying out these actions, and it is alarming as, you know, just kind of, I don't like the GR, I don't like what they do, but I wouldn't condone, you know, government raids on them for this reason. So it's quite callous almost how he's describing, oh, we could just get rid of them. But further follow-up question, do you think Kevin would have said no to it if Laurie hadn't been a member of the GR?
Good question. Probably not. I think his principles are still relatively intact. You know, it's a proper unsettling phone call, wasn't it, with Agent Killaney, talking about just basically killing them all. You know, considering that he answers the phone, he's quite calm, and even when he delivers those statements, the what they talk about escalates, but the tone doesn't. It's quite unsettling, isn't it, the way it's delivered? But no, I still don't think he'd kill them all.
Yeah, I'd like to think not. I think he'd probably have thought about it even more than he does there, but I'd like to think that Kevin wouldn't have them all killed. Okay. So we now cut to Kevin, and he's already pissed, but he's trying to buy more booze, and he abuses his power, just shown in a very small way, but he does do it by flashing his badge and gets to purchase the beers when he shouldn't have been allowed to, and he's then going to drive home when he can barely get his fucking car key in the door. So yeah, that's a fucking great idea, isn't it, Kevin? But anyway, so then he turns and he sees the dry cleaners, and he sees the guy who served him earlier, who he wasn't very happy with, and he storms over and he absolutely just demands that the guy in there opens up. Again, just abuses his power, because he's basically saying to him, like, yeah, or what? Let me in. And the guy's saying, yeah, you can't do this. And he's basically just like, yeah, who's going to fucking stop me? I'm the chief. That's kind of like all the implications on there. So it's just really poor from Kevin overall. And then he busts in and just demands his shirts. And I presume he robs other people's shirts.
Yeah.
But this is a question I want to put out to you guys, because, you know, is there a chance that they are actually his shirts? Because when he puts them back later on, they all do look, you know, uniform and the right size and everything. You know, the guy didn't do like a full investigation, so maybe his system was wrong. Not saying that Kevin's actions are, you know, okay or anything, but maybe they actually are his shirts. I don't know.
That's weirdly, I quite like the fact that they didn't really answer that question. It's like there were a chance they were his, there were a chance he was just robbing people's shirts. I mean, he's of fairly kind of average height and build, isn't he? So you think that there's more than likely going to be white shirts in the, you know, in the dry cleaners that fit that profile. But, you know, the fact that Kevin gets all fired up from the conversation before, and he's heavily drinking and he's abusing his power. It's the first time I really dislike Kevin.
Sorry, but on that point, yeah, agreed. But on that point, there would be like, if he took one or two white shirts, I would be like, definitely, yeah, he's robbed them. But the fact that he does get 8 white shirts back, you know, quite a high number, and obviously, like you say, this is just a great thing about this program. You could easily just say, well, yeah, of course, you know, there'd be loads of white shirts there, but to get 8 white shirts, all of the same size, seemingly, it does make me question it.
I didn't think they were his, and that's because he doesn't get all the white. They're not like it's 8 white shirts in a group. You see him pick up 3 from one, 2 from another.
Yeah, that's right.
But also, you see him when he's handing over the shirts. So earlier on, when he's getting dressed and wearing his dirty shirt, you can see there's a police badge on the arm, on the left arm of the shirt. There's like an embroidered police badge on it. Now you could see those arm badges when the shirts are being handed over. You couldn't see those those badges on the arms when he was handing the shirts over, and that's why I didn't think they were his. But I fully appreciate this show gaslights me quite a bit. So,
the thing is, I'm not sure with those kinds of things. Is that something that you just put on? So, like, say, like the stars on his collar. I'm sure that, you know, the stars on every shirt. He just puts them on. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the badge on the shirt again to see if it was one that looked like permanently on there or not.
It did look like it was one that was stitched in. It looked like a bit like, you know, like a Scout's badge. You know,
okay.
You know, when you have to sew that onto your jumper, that's what it looks like on the arm to me, and that's what. Because I initially wondered if it could be taken off, but I was like, I'm not sure. But I like the fact there's a question we could argue either way. I think that's really clever of the show.
Yeah, that's it. And again, not saying that, if they were his shirts, you know, he's in the right to go in there and, basically threaten this guy and scare him and all this kind of thing. But it does make you think, you know, like when I was saying earlier, like, is he just unlucky with some things? Like, is he right about his shirts? Again, not that it would make any difference to what he's doing, but, you know, it's just a frustration of other things boiling up. I'm not sure. I just think it's always interesting with Kevin to look, because there's always the two sides to pretty much everything that he does. Is he mental, or is he right? And, you know, was he right or was he wrong, and all this kind of thing. So back at the Guilty Remnant house, Patty and Laurie go back and they see Meg, and she's now all dressed in white, and she's not talking. She's writing down on the little note of paper that she's ready. And Matt's then outside talking over a microphone, and he's talking to all the people in the Guilty Remnant, and he's saying that we all still feel pain, love, and loss. You know, you guys aren't just empty now. And Laurie, you initially think that he's going to be quite moved, that she's being quite moved by his words, and that, you know, maybe the doubt that she had before is resurfacing, and that she might run out and go and join Matt or something like that. But nope, she's being moved, but just in completely the other way, where she rushes outside and she just starts frantically blowing the whistle over Matt's speech. So clearly, the talk she's had with Patty has just had far more of a profound effect on her than anything Matt's saying And what did you think about Laurie in this scene?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Matt's piece. I thought it was really moving what he said. Even though I'm personally not religious, I found it, the fact that Gladys is she's a minor character in the show, that he really took the effort to do that. I thought Laura was really annoying. The good riddance, good riddance, the guilty remnant, they can dish it out, but they can't take it, can they?
Phil?
Yeah, I saw the scene just as a way to kind of really reaffirm Laurie's commitment to the GR. So that's, kind of... Because initially, when I saw her running out, I initially thought she was going to go join Matt. So that's what I thought that scene was going to end. So then when she started blowing the whistles, I was like, oh no, she really still strongly believes in the GR, even after everything that's happened. And that the chat with Patty has worked, almost.
Yeah. Patty knows what she's doing, and she's saying to her, there can be no doubt. So Laurie's going to go out there and show that she's, as you say, she's fully committed. So Kevin then arrives home and he deactivates the alarm without any problems. Again,
so
it's just
strange, isn't it, with the alarm situation? I don't know quite what to make of it.
No, same here, but it just makes me think, am I missing something? Am I just not intelligent enough, or is it just intentionally obtuse? I don't know. This program makes me doubt myself. But anyway, so Kevin, for the first time, he's actually going to just open up and be honest with Jill, because he tells her about the divorce that him and Laurie are going to be having. And, surprise, surprise, she's okay about it. And it just shows that if they would both just open up and just communicate honestly with each other, they could have saved themselves a lot of arguments, a lot of pain, and they could have been in a much better situation. And not to be all like philosophical about it, but this is just what people need to do in life. If you've got issues, talk to the people around you. Because things just always feel just a lot better once you do talk things through with people. So I don't know. What do you reckon about that, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the first time you see any emotional connection between them, really, kind of both ways. And I quite like the fact, she even offers it up as kind of a bit of an absolvement, like, it's not your fault. Like, I love you. This isn't your fault. And I was there like, wow, that's surprisingly powerful considering how little positive interaction those two have had. I thought it was really, really nice scene. I think it said a lot about the two of them.
Yeah, I wish that Jill would have just given her dad a hug though. I think the fact that he's so vulnerable and he is her dad. She just kind of says a piece and just goes out the door. I thought it was a tad too cold.
Yeah, there's still just those barriers between them, isn't there? But hopefully things will get a bit better.
Great acting, by the way.
Yeah, that's it. So Kevin, then we just see him just break down once Jill leaves, and like I said earlier, like Justin through just pulls out the levels. To be honest, he does it throughout the whole series, but we can see it just in this episode. Go into levels which I don't think a lot of people really knew that he had, so just fair play to him for that. He's absolutely brilliant. So then the last scene of the episode, we see Gladys's body and it's shipped off to an incinerator. Phil, as you were talking about earlier, there's clear kind of hell imagery here. She's going into, just the pure flames. But my question is there sort of like a time jump here? So is this post-investigation, which Agent Kalani should have done, or has he just had the body like shipped out and then he's just like burned it immediately and just not bothered? So I don't know. What do you reckon, Phil?
I didn't suspect time jump because when you see Gladys's body, there's no indication.
There's no decay.
Yeah, exactly, no decay. And I thought she's been wrapped up in as a plastic sheet in a wooden crate.
There's no embalming there, is there?
Yeah, I did wonder because you see them slap stickers on the crate that she's in, and I did try and pause it to try and see if I could work out what any of them were saying, but I couldn't get any messages from them. So to me, and with the number of other bodies that were being found, I couldn't tell if this was just showing murders like this are happening a lot and the government's just covering it up because they can't do anything about it. There's nothing they can do about it, so they're just trying to hide it, or if actually this is part of a big, wider government conspiracy to actually start removing the cults. That's how I saw
Yeah.
it. I couldn't.
I don't think there's any indication that the other bodies are of cult members, although that could be the case.
Mm.
I did find it surprising that there was no demand for a funeral, to have Gladys's body shipped back from the GR,
Mm.
presumably. My initial thought was that,
I don't
you
think
know,
they'd have a
that-
funeral though,
well,
because
yeah,
they're already dead. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, you can't imagine the guilty remnant waste time with things like that, do they?
Yeah, no
Also-
point taken, guys.
Also, sorry, cutting across as well. You said
problem.
something about the government, not sure if they were all from other cults, but not Delaney, Kalani earlier on says bodies are automatically transferred. Anyone that goes in at a level 3, I think he says the exact words, automatically gets shipped. And that's what made me think all the other bodies there were part of that process.
Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
a stark and depressing scene, wasn't it?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think I've ever seen something quite so, just stark on TV, to be honest, and the whole episode was quite like that.
Mm.
I think, yeah, they're ignoring Kevin's request, and there's no time jump, and yeah, they're just
Yeah.
just doing the business.
Yeah, no, you guys have definitely convinced me on that. So that's it for the breakdown of the episode. So we'll just give some quick overall thoughts. So I'll start off if that's all right. So, not that last week's episode was bad in any way, but it was, I think we all agreed that it was probably the least good out of the first 4. But this episode is just really taking the program back to the heights, and it's just honestly just simply just brilliant. It's just so dense, so much to talk about. There's so many moving moments, so many layers, and there's just so much conflict within each character. Even someone like Patty, who we've seen just be one-dimensional, in just a few lines, we've got lots of questions and we want to know more about her. And even minor characters like Gladys as well, we barely see her speak. Obviously the only time we do see her speak is when she's begging for her life, but just through some kind of background information we get a lot more kind of depth about her, and start to care about her. And honestly, this program is just something else. It's so good. Yeah. that's I just love it so much I can barely put it into words, as you can see from my stumbling there. And what do you think overall?
I thought it was a great episode because it's very deep, as you say, and it's very stark as well in its uncomfortable scenes. So the morgue, the cremation, the stoning right at the beginning, the sequence between Meg and Kevin when Kevin breaks down from the divorce, the dry cleaners. There's lots of unsettling moments, and it really did grip me. And Agent Kalani's phone call as well. It all adds up. I was really surprised with the Good Riddance storyline, the Guilty Remnant storyline, where they went with that. I didn't see that coming at all. I was really starting to empathise with Laurie. You see her conflict with the swings and the lighter and other moments, and then you have the panic attack. And I wouldn't say I was on Team Laurie or anything like that, but I was definitely seeing more of it. But when she went outside with the whistle, I thought, you know what, you're just really annoying now. But what I like most about the show, it's the link with kind of the absurd and the abnormal, and the links with psychology. So things like getting the alarm wrong, things like the links with fire, the reference to the dogs, and just things like that. I really like the way that they're working it all in. And like I said earlier, if I was just to watch the show kind of in the background, you'd miss all this. But that's what's great about watching it, and that's what's going to be great for the listeners as well by listening to this podcast as well, because they'll notice things that they probably wouldn't have.
But on that point as well, I think what it does brilliantly, because of some of the things like with the alarm, it makes you question if you're reading too much into things as well. And I'm sure they will be doing, they're doing that on purpose. They're putting that kind of thing in there. And maybe there is no overall meaning, but they know, okay, let's just have someone struggling with the alarm a bit. And they know that people are going to, have hour-long podcasts talking about it, they know exactly what they're doing. Phil, what was your overall thoughts?
I thought it was a fantastic episode. I think they've really, in this episode, they just continue to demonstrate what's so good about this program. There's constant. The key thing we've been talking about here is the questions. you know, they're still 5 episodes in. They've not really solved anything. I mean, I'm still kind of on the fence as to who or what the dog killer is, for example. But it's so good the way it constantly makes me question what's going on. It doesn't really answer any of my questions either, but I'm not annoyed by that, if that makes sense, because they kind of subtly bring it back in later on. You know, him struggling with the alarms and things. Initially, when we were talking about the security alarm and him struggling with it, I was thinking about, like, well, where was that alarm in the first episode when the stag broke into his house? And then I started thinking, what did the stag mean again? And are we ever going to see that? You know what I mean? And so I just start going down this path. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's very clever writing that can keep you so drawn in without getting fed up or annoyed with the lack of answers.
Yeah. No, that's it. They give you just enough, but if they even offer the hint of one answer, they're going to pose 3 more mysteries for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure as we go, you know, throughout the weeks, throughout the episodes, there's going to be far more for us to talk about and dissect. But that's it for episode 5. Gladys, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. It's been, I think, a really good episode. And we will see you all next week. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Hope everyone's enjoying it.
Yeah.
And see you next week.
See you next week.